Aquinas, Albert Magus, the great theologian, St. Thomas Aquinas, depended heavily on the writings of Pseudo-Dionysius and the construction of their system. In the Summa Theologica, which is the great work of St. Thomas Aquinas, sometimes simply called the Summa, he quotes Dionysius, Pseudo-Dionysius, 1,700 times. When he was quoting Aristotle, it turned out that he wasn't quoting Aristotle, but a work that came in to Europe about the 12th century, which was Proclus's Elements, once attributed to Arabic thinkers. Not pagan, these are all pagans. Yeah. So look here. What are we going to do about this? Well, I'd like to take a few minutes out, and I have a couple of pieces of paper to read for you, is during the period of, well, you could really say from the earliest days in Europe, there was the great expectation that if they ever could get back the texts of these great philosophers and thinkers of the ancient world, that there would be a burst of energy and the whole system would reveal a great wisdom tradition. They could walk among the ruins. Ancient ruins were more magnificent than anything they built or had seen. And therefore they knew the ruins, they lived among the ruins, and they had these dreams of these great men of the past if they could only get in touch with their knowledge and wisdom. Now came all the literature. So important was this wisdom tradition that when the de Medicis, who funded the first Plato's Academy in Florence, right, at 1490, 95, 90, was run by Ficino. He was the great translator and philosopher in his own right. The first work that the de Medicis wanted to see translated was not Plato, not any of these thinkers. They wanted to see what we call today Hermetic literature. That's what they wanted to get. The wisdom tradition, because the Hermetic was seen as the Egyptian literature. They thought it was very ancient. They thought it was simultaneously or concurrently with the writings of Moses. They were only off, 1,400 years, but that was the great drive to get this literature translated and get it out. There was high expectation that it would transform the whole culture. Now, then, remember now, we're going to be talking about this literature as it came out and had an impact on the culture. That's all we're going to do for a few minutes. Here came the flood of translations. Plato came in 500, 1500, 1505, and many other translations came pouring out. They flooded Europe. Latin translations had a major effect. The writings of Pseudo-Dionysius were regarded as equivalent to the Bible itself. They called it the second Bible. They regarded it as so serious that they thought that if anything were to happen to that literature, they would lose the whole development and the way of seeing Christianity as a rational structure. At this time, it was inconceivable for someone to say that if you were a Christian, you weren't rational, because they included all of these writings. They could include all of these writings. They could find a way to bring them together because of this man. What he did in the most remarkable way, simple way, is that he saw the end of the old Greek culture. Now look at the date, 529. The writings of Pseudo-Dionysius appear for the first time at 530 or 531. They were found in an interesting country. Can you guess which country? Syria. The Platonists, therefore, who were exiled, fled Athens, landed in Syria, and among them must have been this person who did an amazing thing. He took this tradition, he took this Greek philosophical tradition, and he boiled it down, he compressed it down to its most fundamental elements. He gave it a Christian image, and he loaded it with Christian symbols sufficient to pass it off as Christian metaphysics. But in essence, it was nothing other than Platonic thought being disguised as Christian as it entered then into Europe, and therefore Christian metaphysics was nothing other than Platonic metaphysics brought into Europe under a disguise. Pseudo-Dionysius. Now look here. For a long while it was accepted as genuine. People accepted it as genuine. And I have a couple of quotes. There are many quotes you can get about this period. And I just brought a few of them. The Bishop of Aire, Francois Dufault, thought that the Hermes Trismegistia works attained to a knowledge of divine things surpassing that of the Hebrew prophets, equaling that of the apostles and the evangelists. They believed Hermes must have lived at a date earlier than Moses, and he must have been divinely inspired. He published a French translation of the Hermetica. He repeats these statements and seems almost to elevate the works of Hermes Trismegistus to the level of canonical scriptures. French translation of the Hermeticus included a French translation of the Hermetica along with the Greater Hermeticus, dedicated to a cardinal, Charles de Lorraine, in 1549. Religious enthusiasm was high in making headway in the French ecclesiastical circles. The first edition of the Greek text of the Corpus Hermeticum was made available in 1554. A translation was made. A preface by Virgilius stresses the resemblance of Hermeticism to Christianity and states that Hermes the Egyptian lived before the Pharaohs and consequently before Moses. There are many quotes. In the preface to Tyrad's work, the Bishop of Évreux, eventually a cardinal, emphasized that embracing the works of the classic Kabbalists and the Hermeticists brought the Hebrew tradition into a new unity. And there are many other. Now look here, let's take a look at what this means. It means that at one time